Oop oop, Graham. You know, we've been away for a while, and that's the best you can do.
That was disappointing.
Our big return. Interesting. So, Graham.
Yeah. What?
We've been gone for a while, but in our absence, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post back in June, as I do, right? And
they pay you for that?
They do not pay me for that. They pay me in ego points.
Fame and fortune.
Well, fame.
Citation. I'm going to look it up.
Okay, do so. I'll link to that article in the Science Monkey webpage, sciencemonkey.ca.
How to increase your growth in 6 easy steps? Is that the one?
How to pleasure your woman using just a toothpick and a jar of Vegemite.
Poking her with it.
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
We're off on a great start.
Facing an overpopulation problem.
Yeah, so my background, I'm an epidemiologist and a bit of a demographer. And I was a little tired of every time I speak to somebody, a layperson who doesn't really study international health or development or look at global affairs on a regular basis, the first thing they always say is, well, the problem with the world is that there are too many people.
That's so annoying when you say that.
But you've heard that too, right?
Yes, you've heard all that.
And before we go into the details of the article, I want to say that I got a lot of hate mail for it. I get hate mail for a lot of things. So that one caused a fair amount from both people on the left and the right. And then Al Jazeera contacted me to interview me about that particular topic, which is specifically on this thing called the demographic transition. And that interview got like 35 million downloads. So clearly there's a demand by people to understand this stuff.
Too many people.
or just the right amount. So just the right amount. And I mean, I'm curious to know what you think about the nature of world population growth. Is it too fast? Are there too many people? Should we do something about it?
The chair is creaking a lot here. I don't know if that's picking it up. It's not my bones. It's the chair I'm sitting on. I think if I think about it just quickly, I wouldn't say that there's an aggregate necessarily world population problem, but we probably have too many people in certain parts of the world and not enough in others. And it's maybe more of a distribution problem.
What's too many? How do we define too many?
What the local area can sort of support.
This thing we call carrying capacity.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty vague term, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, look at a place
Well, I know we have too many people because of fertilizer, right? Which is artificially boosts crop yields. And so if we had a planet that we didn't have any artificial fertilizer, we probably wouldn't have as many people because our crop yields wouldn't be as great. Or
we'd have just the same amount of people eating different kinds of less caloric food.
Right. Eating bugs.
If we were all vegan, we probably wouldn't need as much agricultural products. So it depends how you look at the problem. I mean, if you look at the world distribution of people, almost everybody lives in South Asia and in East Asia. Mm-hmm. In fact, the most densely populated places are Indonesia and southeastern China. Right? And Indonesia, they don't produce all their food. They import their food, much of it. So the problem may not be the ability of that land to produce enough food. It's the ability of the people to acquire it, perhaps, one could argue.
Okay.
So
it's not a distribution of people problem, it's a distribution of food problem.
Could be. So there's an old economics definition of food security, which says that food security consists of 3 things: access, availability, and use. So the availability of food is one thing. Is there enough of it? But even if there's enough of it, can you access it? Do you have money to do so? Do you have the wherewithal to walk into a supermarket and get it?
Healthcare being available or accessible.
Right. So if you think about where we are right now in the Science Monkey studios in downtown Toronto, there's a supermarket down the street. So there's lots of food available. But the homeless guy in front, can he access it? No, he can't. So is he food secure?
Also, I've heard that Toronto has about enough food to last 2 days.
Every city does.
Yeah.
Every city has about enough resources to last 48 hours.
48 hours. That's kind of scary.
Yeah, kind of. Which is why I keep you in here, so I can always eat you if need be. Because you're delicious, my chunky white friend. We have to edit that out. That just sounds wrong. Okay, so back on the topic. So here's what I was arguing in the article. It's not so much an argument as it is a proposal of a possibility.
Okay, before we get into the article.
Oh, sure. Please do.
Why would you say there are too many people? So what's the deleterious effect of too many people? Is it pollution?
There's a number of things. Number 1, perhaps insufficient food, leading to starvation. Number 2, environmental degradation.
Right.
Number 3, pollution, which is kind of like
environmental
degradation. Number 3, the faster spread of disease, perhaps, through more dense populations. And number 5, is that 4 or 5? Was that 4?
I think we're on 8.
Right, 8. Number 12, probably something to do with border insecurity. Because mass migrations compel nations to get antsy. Violence, right. So, and maybe psychological distress as well. Maybe all the kinds of dysfunctions we see in large populations have to do with population pressures.
So if we could get people to have enough food to eat, that squirrel is leaping up and down and going in circles. It's kind of neat. Anyway, I'm easily distracted.
By the way, gentle listener, Graham is a dog. He's distracted by squirrels.
I was drinking out of the bird bath.
That's
anyway, back to the matter at hand. If we had enough food and we had clean energy and we had distribution of wealth and resources so that violence wasn't occurring, then that would actually make the population problem go away. So it's actually not really a numbers game we're talking about. I would. The number could be too much or too little depending on what's happening with those.
When we talk about population expansion, growth, overpopulation, we're talking really about Malthus. Remember Malthus, that dude from the 17th century?
That's my Malthusian.
Exactly, right. So Malthus believes that population growth is geometric, exponential, and food production is arithmetic, linear. As a result, there's always going to be a point at which population growth exceeds food production. We call that the Malthusian trap. But it hasn't happened at a global level. So the pushback tends to be that population growth is not exponential, it's something else. Or there are other factors that prevent us from running out of food, like new technologies or new economies, like when Marx suggested that labor is capital. So suddenly having a lot of people produces wealth. And this is where I want to go with this. Because the wealthiest parts of the world are declining in numbers.
Right.
And so to maintain their wealth, they need to augment their populations. So in order to do that, they either need to squeeze out more kids or they need to increase their immigration policies. Right. So I believe a lot of the crises that we're seeing in some parts of the world, like Europe, with large amounts of immigrants coming in and supposedly creating cultural conflict, are the result of demographic pressures that require these European populations to augment their population sizes. It's unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, the other case for that would be Japan. Although I don't see them relaxing their immigration policy anytime soon.
Right. So Japan is interesting.
They are just aging out.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an island of old people with no one to take care of them at a certain point.
Right. So where I want to go with this is to talk about the demographic transition. Are you familiar with the demographic transition?
This every society goes through stages?
Yeah.
But if you could summarize it.
Sure. There are essentially 4 stages and possibly 5. And the transition takes place between stage 2 and stage 3. So in stage 1, if we picture what the pre-industrial societies look like, there was agricultural, not a lot of healthcare or organized services in general. And so people lived in farms for the most part. If you had kids, they tended to die a lot.
Right.
So you had a lot of kids because you didn't expect them to live very long. Most people die between the ages of 1 and 10.
Right.
And so the economic cost of having a child was quite low. You actually, they were advantageous. Mm-hmm. They work the farm, and all you had to do was feed them. Mm-hmm. Pestilence was everywhere. You didn't expect to live very long. So death rates were high, birth rates were high. Population size was low. That's stage 1. Right. A magical thing happens around stage 2. In Europe, stage 2 was kicked off by the Industrial Revolution, the Agricultural Revolution, and the Hygiene Revolution. So the ability to...
Hygiene?
Wow. Graham just waved to me and said, "Hi, comma, Gene."
I think they got that.
Really?
The intonation of my voice. I'm a trained actor. Come on.
So with advances like crop rotation and selective breeding for crops, we're producing more food, but also we discovered hygiene. So the need to wash your hands after going to the bathroom, the need to actually have your toilets.
Is indoor plumbing?
Indoor plumbing,
At this
exactly.
point already in stage 2?
Vaccination.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, really? So stage 2 is a very long stage then.
Yeah.
It's a long way from being just subsistence farming to having vaccination.
It's been 100 years of transition historically. So during stage 2, what happens is we die less. So the kids that would have died within the first 5 years of life are now living. Therefore,
fewer of us die.
Fewer of us die, but fewer of us die in extreme youth.
Okay.
That's the key here. But we're still having the same amount of kids. As a result, population size increases dramatically. Stage 3 is the transition. Now, in stage 3, something magical happens socially that compels us.
Explanation.
Yeah,
it's something magical.
Well, a social explanation.
Therefore it's magic.
So, because my students are health sciences students, and I tell them, can you guess what happened in stage 3? And of course, they can't because they're thinking in terms of physical interventions.
Right.
These are social developments, and you being the social guy can probably predict what those evolutions are.
Oh, do tell.
Well, education, number one. Changing roles for women.
Right.
The secularity or secularism.
Changing nature of work, too.
Changing nature of work, urbanization. So in stage 3, we don't need as many children because we're not living on the farm as much. Yeah. And the price of a child goes up. Yeah. So you got to send your kid to school. As you know, being the father of 2 kids is expensive.
And sure is. And women are postponing having kids, right?
Because they're having more education time.
Having fewer kids because they're reproductive years.
Exactly. So now birth rate comes down to drop to meet the falling death rates. So population size starts to plateau. Right. Population growth starts to plateau rather. Stage 4 is when
where we are at, maybe.
Yes, we're in stage 4. We think late stage.
You just described stage 3.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So
in stage 4, we have very low fertility rates and very low death rates.
Okay.
So when someone in our lives dies, that's a big deal.
Right.
Well, how many years ago that wasn't a big deal? It was sad, but now it's unusual. If someone has a kid, that's a big deal. It's that unusual for us now. So in stage 4, population growth is kind of stable as well, but 0, because death rate and birth rate are equal again, and they're both low. So the theoretical stage 5 is where countries like Japan would be, because their death rate exceeds their birth rate.
Right.
So the transition takes place between 2 and 3. And the question before us is, are the nations of the developing world, where we think most population growth happens, are they transitioning? I think they are. And the hate mail that I got was from people who insist that they are not. In fact, that I am an apologist for the brown horde. So there is a racial component to this that I cannot stress enough.
That's sort of the idea of, we need a greater population. We need to encourage birth rates, but only among certain types of people.
Yeah.
And the types of people that are actually having lots of babies, but that's not necessarily desirable.
There's a documentary on YouTube. I don't want to give it any publicity, so I won't give its name. But it's about this phenomenon, and it's an argument that the Western world, by which they mean white people, need to have more children, or else they'll be out-reproduced by the non-Western population. So
I never understand why that's so worrisome to people. That's what I don't get. But
they want more of themselves and less of not them.
but like, if you sit down and ask why, they don't have a good reason for that.
I think they feel is the reason is self-evident, that of course we believe that our values and our descriptors of ourselves are innately valuable, therefore they should be preserved.
Then why are you dying out? I mean, if they're so great.
That's a good question. Yeah. It's kind of like, I'm a brown guy, as you know, as our listeners may know. And
you sound brown.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you very much. We have sounded. That's not racist. I'm brown. I can do that. So people always ask me, do I intend to marry another brown woman and have brown kids? And I said, well, that's not a factor I think about.
Ask you that?
People do ask me that, or they have asked me that. And my response is usually, because I need to, because the race is dying out. There's only 1 billion of us. There's no shortage of brown people. The race will be fine. The culture will be fine.
But as you know, I don't know, you're having your genome sequenced, right? So there's probably a little tiny portion of that genome that makes you different in terms of race from anyone else on this planet.
Right.
So I don't understand why people are hanging on to that little tiny piece as if it identifies or defines everything about them.
Well, let's play devil's advocate for a second and suggest that maybe they're not talking about race, they're talking about culture and values. And maybe they're afraid that Western culture / values that they think are worth preserving are dying out.
I know plenty of people who aren't white that are way more Western than I am.
That is obviously the response. Yeah. And when an immigrant arrives, they assimilate rather quickly.
It's not necessarily such a good thing to be so Western either.
It's the nature of the world. The world changes.
I know. I'm taking a little bit of devil's advocate.
Good.
I just think to sit these people down and say, yes, but why is it so imperative that people that look like you outnumber people who don't look like you? They don't really have a good answer.
So that's the hate mail I got from the right wing. Yeah. I got hate mail from the left wing as well. Can you imagine why?
Well, because they think that overpopulation is a real problem for the environment.
For the environment, precisely. Yeah. But here's my pushback to that.
Which I would actually agree with reflexively.
That's true. Now,
thinking about it.
Here's my pushback. Yeah. Where do you think all the population growth is happening in the world?
I see. In places that are not destroying the environment.
Ooh, aren't you a clever boy? It's happening almost exclusively in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa.
Right.
In fact, the fastest growing part of the world are sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah. And those people, their per capita consumption of global resources is minuscule compared to you and mine. Right.
I guess the argument would be once they advance to a state, but then technology is going to be much cleaner by then, I would hope. And already they're leapfrogging over dirty technology that we've used in the past. Can I ask a quick question? Sure. If you wanted a quick measure, indicator of where society is in these stages, would it be the median age of the population?
That's one thing we look at. We look at the population pyramid, we call it, demographic pyramid. So the pyramid shows us for each age group how many men and women are in each of those groups. So if you imagine the older years on top and the younger years on the bottom, a developing world nation, like a stage 2 nation, would have a very broad, flattened out pyramid, right? Because most people are very young and very few are old. But for a country like Japan, it's almost a cylinder,
right?
Because very few are young and most are old. So that's a quick way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is just look at birth rates and death rates, and see how high they are and how different they are from each other, and look at total fertility rates, so the number of children produced by a woman lifetime. So the replacement rate for most nations is about 2.3 to 2.5 children per woman. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is we need one child to replace the man and one child to replace the woman in a heterosexual coupling. And because some children die, you need something, a fraction above that. Yeah. So Canada, the replacement rate is about 2.1, 2.2.
Those 0.3 of a child, they're easier to take care of.
They are. And, they have one fewer orifice to have to feed.
You usually stick them in the corner somewhere. They don't take up much space.
Yeah, and, good bookshelves. I know where we're going with this. Okay, so
1/3 off.
The projections of the demographic transition, some of the ones that I mentioned in the Huffington Post article, are that we think by about 2070, the population of the Earth will plateau at about 12 billion. Depending on which model you use. Right? Some say 12 billion, some say 15 billion.
Have people calculated the carrying capacity of the Earth? Is that exceeded, or?
It depends, right? It depends on what kinds of foods those people expect to have. It depends on whether you think peak oil is a real thing. It depends on whether the economies of those nations will be manufacturing economies, agrarian economies, or information economies. So there's a lot of depends going on here. But
there might be in your future.
Damn you. So if the demographic transition is true, and I think it is, and I'll tell you why I think it is in a second, but I think it is, that means we don't need these furtive, frequent calls for population control all the time. Because when people call for population control, they're saying those people over there need to be controlled. It's never these people here.
Right.
Those brown, usually Muslim hordes, right? It's a very specific demographic we're criticizing, need to be controlled. And my pushback is, no, they don't. What they need is development. They need education for the women. They need economic development for society, and that will naturally reduce fertility.
Right. Get them closer to that stage 3
precisely
transition.
There is a thing, though, called the demographic trap.
So you could actually help people.
Oh, look at that.
And achieve the goal of population control.
Right. Without having to institute draconian sterilization, as has been tried. That's been tried in many places. But there is a thing called the demographic trap, however. The demographic trap is when, it's a theoretical construct. It's when nations get to stage 2, but do not progress to stage 3. So they're just exploding in population with no sign of slowing down. And some people say Yemen is in demographic trap. And they think there are some social forces that compel that trappedness. Can you imagine what those social forces might be?
Patriarchy.
Yeah, I think so.
Would be a big one.
That's a big one. And patriarchy can be closely related to religion. Yeah, so, right, so if there are social forces that are compelling women to remain in a solely reproductive role, then some people argue that can compel a nation to remain in stage 2.
Right. Which is kind of where a lot of, it seems, right-wing politicians in the U.S. want to return to, right? This idea of
ironically, because they will criticize some nations for doing that, but then want to return their nation to that state as well. I don't think demographic trap is a real thing. I don't. Having looked at this around the world, I think most nations are striving to transition. So it took the UK and other European nations about 100 years to go from a fertility rate from 9 to 4. Right, for women. It took Iran, I think, 10 years. So the so-called developing countries of today are transitioning faster.
Right.
And the reason for that is we know how to do it. And the solution is education and wealth. Right? Because nobody wants 12 kids unless you're one of those people. Yeah.
Education, as usual, is the magic bullets.
Yeah, but I can't stress enough this how when we talk about sterilization or population control or things like that, we're always targeting these particular parts of the world, and our rationale is always environmental footprint, but yet those aren't the people creating environmental footprint.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, it's a red herring to talk about population. You should just talk about environmental footprints.
Yeah.
Period. And just say whoever has the biggest environmental footprints should be doing the most to reduce those.
That's right.
Not talking about, those people over there are too numerous.
That's right. Yeah. You want to allow another 1,000 people to exist on this planet? Take one fewer flight per year. Right. Yeah. Simple.
So do we have any... Air Canada, our new sponsor. That's not going to work. We forgot to name check our sponsor.
Oh, yeah. Because we haven't done this show in so long. We do have a sponsor, Checked. CECHEKD.
Check it out, right? Wow.
Yeah, and to access Checked, go to sciencemonkey.ca/checked. And to access our books, because we write books. We're smart mother lovers.
Czech Republic. I'm just going to riff off the check here.
Go to...
I'll write you a check.
There's a chess joke there somewhere, but I don't want to do it. I don't want to sink that low. Yeah.
Oh, go on, mate.
To buy our books, go to amazon.ca. No, go to sciencemonkey.ca/Amazon. But that may change soon because Amazon is doing away with their A stores, and I may have to change the website a little bit. I think it's time for some Facts and Furious, my friend.
Furious. And then later we can open up the Benevolent Emporium with Celestial.
Oh, do you have something for that?
I do.
Oh, let's do that now.
Okay.
Let's insert the music here. Here comes the music. Music. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think it's done.
Benevolent Emporium of Celestial Knowledge. I've exclusively done it from China, and I thought we should expand it because there's lots of celestial knowledge of a benevolent nature that came from other parts of the pre-modern world. So I wanted to look at Persia as one of those sources. And in particular, a medical scientist by the name Ibn Sina, or Avicenna. He lived from 973 to 1037. And he was one of those polymaths, as usually are, right? So I'll read the little short intro before I read the part of his work. This comes from Fordham University's article on him. He was a sort of universal genius, known first as a physician. To his works on medicine, he afterward added religious tracts, poems, works on philosophy, on logic, physics, on mathematics, and astronomy. He was also a statesman and a soldier, and he's said to have died of debauchery.
Good man.
As every good scientist should. So anyway, this was his writing on medicine, the introduction to his work on medicine, which I thought was interesting. It begins, medicine considers the human body as to the means by which it is cured and by which it is driven away from health. So preventative medicine, right off the bat. Right? The knowledge of anything, since all things have causes, is not acquired or complete unless it is known by its causes. Therefore, in medicine, we ought to know the causes of sickness and health. Don't just treat the symptoms. Because health and sickness and their causes are sometimes manifest and sometimes hidden and not to be comprehended except by the study of symptoms, we must also study the symptoms of health and disease, but as a route to the causes. Now, it is established in the sciences that no knowledge is acquired save through the study of its causes and beginnings. If it has had causes and beginnings... Oops. If it has had causes and beginnings, nor completed except by knowledge of its accidents and accompanying essentials. Of these causes, there are 4 kinds: material, efficient, formal, and final. That was someone from Ottawa calling me.
Oh, maybe it was me. Was I calling you?
You weren't calling me right now, were you? Want to check?
Psychically.
No? Okay. Material causes on which health and sickness depend are the affected member, which is the immediate subject, and the humerus. And these are
My member's affected.
Yeah, there you go. And these two are subjects that, according to their mixing together, alter. In the composition and alteration of the substance, which is thus composed, a certain unity is attained. Efficient causes are the causes changing and preserving the conditions of the human body, as airs and what are united with them, and evacuation and retention in districts and cities and habitable places, and what are united with them, and changes in age and diversities in it, and in races and arts and manners, and bodily and animate movings and restings and sleepings and wakings on account of them, and in things which befall the human body when they touch it and are either in accordance or at variance with nature. So environmental factors, I mean, it's kind of all there. Formal causes are physical constitutions and combinations of virtues which result from them. Final causes are operations, and in the science of operations lies the science of virtues as we have set forth. These are the subjects of the doctrine of medicine. Whence one inquires concerning the disease and curing the human body, one ought to attain perfection in this research, namely how health may be preserved and sickness cured, and the causes of this kind are rules in eating and drinking, and the choice of air, and the measure of exercise and rest, and doctoring with medicines and doctoring with the hands. All this with physicians is according to 3 species, the well, the sick, and the medium of whom we have spoken. A lot of it's in there that we still are talking about today, just using different vocabulary.
Yeah, so essentially you're saying to be well, just eat properly, exercise properly, and
breathe clean air.
Look at that. Revolutionary.
Go see your doctor once in a while.
Not socially.
And your environment might get you sick. Right? I don't know, that's pretty cool. So it was Ibn Sina writing in the 10th century.
Sweet.
So we could close the book of celestial emporium of benevolent knowledge.
We need like a sound effect for closing a book.
Yeah, it's a very thick tome.
I have some questions for you, my friend.
About Ibn Sina?
No, I do not.
Okay. Sina?
Ibn means son of, right?
Okay.
Isn't it?
Sure.
In Arabic? Son of Sina?
Probably.
Sina son?
Yeah.
Sina son. All right, cool.
Also, there are Arabic honorifics that mean parent of so-and-so, but I don't think it means that.
All right.
This is Persian.
I got a question for you right now. This is the Facts and the Furious. So hit the theme music here.
Okay.
Which gender of shark has the thicker skin and why? Female or male?
Which gender of shark has a thicker skin and why? I will say female.
Why?
Because she's got to put up with so much shit from the male sharks.
Pretty close. Pretty close. Interestingly, male humans have thicker skins than female humans. But female sharks have thicker skins because during mating, the males have this tendency to bite the females.
Yes.
It's interesting, huh? Look at you guessing that correctly. So,
I got one for you.
Okay, go.
Okay. First of all, do you know how many bones are in the human body?
206?
206. Except for what kind of humans?
Babies.
Yes, children.
Yeah.
Do you know how many they have?
About 100 more?
Yeah, that's shocking. They have 300.
Yeah.
I knew the skull fused together, but I didn't know there were like hundreds of other bones that are fused together.
So much of a baby is cartilaginous.
That's why you can like wiggle them around.
Right.
Like,
you can throw them down; they don't break as easily.
Bounce them.
Right. You get like 4 years of warranty free.
Right.
Childcare. You can break it; they bounce back. Then they harden. Like, no, this is a keeper. So, how long ago did the dinosaurs die? It's like 63 million. Is that right?
Oh, I wanted to say more than that, but you could be right.
I think it's
Only there's a way we could find out.
If only we had like some kind of thing we could type in.
I think while you're BSing, I'll look that up.
But I asked because around that same time,
there are all sorts of different types of dinosaurs, right?
Yeah, around that same time, we had a common ancestor with another smart mammal. Do you know
wait. So that smart mammal was a was around and then 2 descendants?
No, another smart mammal exists today.
Okay.
And our common ancestor existed at around the time that the dinosaurs were killed.
So the smart mammal that exists today, and we came from that common ancestor that was lived around 66 million years ago.
Look at that. So,
Mesozoic area.
Can you guess who that smart mammal is? Well, clearly chimps, right? But they're pretty close to us.
No, I was going to say something further apart, like a dolphin.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
So dolphins and humans had a common ancestor around the time of the dinosaurs. It's fairly obvious if you stop to think about it, but it's kind of cool.
Yeah. So they went back into the water, right?
Yeah, that's right.
They got out and they're like, dry, my skin, scaly. Go back into the water. It's warm there.
You should teach biology. Okay. All the planets of our solar system, if you look down from the north, appear to spin counterclockwise, except for one. Which planet appears to spin clockwise?
I want to say Venus.
You should do what you want to do.
Not Venus.
It is Venus. Do you know why?
Okay, this is... I know Mercury is kind of locked because it's so close to the sun.
It's not tidally locked.
It
does actually rotate.
Why did Venus spin the other way? Because it's upside down. Because of its position in the disk of gas when it was formed.
The ecliptic? Yeah.
No, I don't know.
It's because we think it was struck by something.
Wow. That must have been a massive collision.
Yeah. Mind you, the Earth was struck by something.
Superman did that.
Superman did do that.
He reversed.
What a dick, huh? He messed up Venus for no particular reason.
No, not Venus.
I know why he turned time around.
Lois Lane back.
So that means that time on Venus runs backwards.
Yeah, because that's how time works.
That's how time works.
That's what I didn't understand about that. Just causing the Earth to spin around the other suddenly reverses time in the universe. No, I'm not buying that. And I'll buy the flying man who's impervious to everything.
I will totally buy the flying man.
But I'm not
What's he going for? That. So, do you know the Earth was struck by something large as well about 4 billion years ago?
And what's the moon comes from, right?
That's where the moon comes from. So it was struck by a Mars-sized object. So the Earth used to be significantly bigger than it is today. And so, and the moon, of course, used to be quite closer to the Earth than it is now. So in the time of the dinosaurs, the moon was enormous. And it's moving further away every year.
And I wonder if that hadn't happened, if we would have arisen on this planet.
Good question.
So many weird...
I don't know why, the female reproductive cycle has a lunar aspect to it. Right? Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Maybe one of our listeners could tell us, who isn't a freak. Do you have a question?
Do they exist? Yes.
Okay.
World's largest amphibian. So, not reptile.
Right.
Amphibian.
Right. Good question. Is it this? I want to say what's that thing we use to like make really hot coffee?
Oh, a French press.
No, you know what I'm talking about? It's a steaming thing.
Samovar.
It is an S. Begins with an S. It's also the name of an amphibian.
Yeah, I didn't know it was coffee though.
Well, maybe I got that wrong. I don't really make.
Sounds a little bit like colander, but it's
salamander.
Salamander, yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Oh, well, it's the giant salamander.
Oh, right on.
It can grow up to how long?
So what's the salamander used for if not coffee? Just to clean things?
No, I don't know. This is the first time I've heard a reference to salamanders and coffee in the same sentence.
Am I wrong? Isn't not a salamander also a thing in the kitchen? Isn't it? Maybe?
In your kitchen.
I'm going to Google this right now.
Coffee lost its tail.
We have to figure this out. Salamander.
It can grow up to 5 feet in length.
Salamander heater. It's a kind of heater. It's a forced air convection heater.
All right.
Or whatever. So anyway, so the giant salamander does what? How big is it?
5 feet long.
Wow. Wasn't there a Star Trek Voyager episode where they turn into giant salamanders?
I don't remember that.
Because no one watches that show.
Okay. No, you go.
My turn, right?
Your turn.
Okay. Here is... Well, it's not a question. It's a fact you may find interesting.
Okay.
You
can turn it into a question.
Oh, I could. Let's do that. Okay. There is a star.
Don't just put a question mark on the end of it.
There is a star in the sky whose name you might know. It's a red...
Steven Seagal.
He hasn't been a star in a very long time. It's
a potato with a goatee.
He's a vampire with diabetes. This star is a red supergiant. And if it were to go supernova, then our sky would light continuously for 2 months. And this could happen anytime. It could
2
happen.
months.
It could happen right now, 1,000 years from now, or tomorrow. What is that star?
Is it visible?
Yes, we know this star. In fact, the star's name is so well known that there's a movie.
Centauri.
There's a movie named after the star.
Oh, Sirius?
A funny movie.
Sirius is blue. Oh, Red Dwarf.
No.
Funny
Starring
movie
Michael
named after
Keaton.
a star?
Starring Michael Keaton.
Beetlejuice.
Betelgeuse.
Ah, I did not know. What's the proper pronunciation?
I'm assuming Betelgeuse. You're the linguist. It's Greek, right? It's German, rather. Yeah.
Say it 3 times and see what happens.
Yeah, so it could go supernova any time. If it did, we'd have total daylight for 2 months.
Suntan all day and all night.
What would that do for vegetation and for
that's true. Yeah,
wildlife?
the wildlife would go kooky.
Yeah, I mean, the plants would go nuts,
Yeah.
but the wildlife would go kooky.
Yeah, that would be awful. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
But the vampires would die out.
There you go. Including Steven Seagal?
Well, the diabetes is going to kill
That would be
him.
wonderful.
If he's listening, we don't mean that, Mr. Seagal.
You can take him.
To the movies.
All right, to the movies.
To the bank.
How
the
long
blood bank. Sorry.
does it take food to entirely digest?
Entirely digest.
Entirely digest. So they don't define what entirely means. So I'm assuming from when it enters to when it leaves.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Okay, I'll go with that. I'll go with that.
I'm asking you.
No, I'm thinking.
You're thinking. Oh, you're cogitating.
I'm cogitating.
You're pondering.
Um,
You're ruminating. Ah, that's a good one.
Wow. I'm digesting.
That's a bit too
Well, I want to say like the time of peristalsis is only a few hours.
Okay.
However,
wait, peristalsis.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay, it starts in the throat. No, when does peristalsis end?
peristalsis is the process
All
of
the way
movement.
through the intestines.
Yeah, the
Right.
movement.
Okay.
And but peristalsis is also that wasn't he in Beverly Hills 90210?
That's right.
I have
He
to,
was
have to take out that joke. That's a bad joke.
he was a crooner.
Hey, pal.
Peristalsis and his big band.
So
hard to
if it's the
swallow.
time of peristalsis, then usually 24 hours. However, it depends on what we're eating, doesn't it?
This is true.
So I'm going to just be a good player for this game. Say 24 hours. What is it?
Well, I don't know how reliable this is, but it says 12 hours.
Okay.
Which
makes
seems more
sense.
reasonable. 24 hours seems a lot.
Seems like a lot. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I mean,
if you eat something and it starts to disagree with you, it doesn't take.
yeah, then it's coming out both holes at that point.
Nice.
Okay, let me see here. Oh, so which drupaceous fruit? Drupaceous.
Now you're challenging my vocabulary.
Were Hawaiian women once forbidden by law to eat?
Okay, I've got to figure out what drupaceous means. Does it mean it looks droopy? Dude, your earlobes are so drupaceous.
Yeah, I think so.
I have to know what drupaceous means in order to...
Let's see.
answer that.
Resembling a drupe. And a drupe
There you
is
go.
a stone fruit, an indehiscent fruit,
So I'm going to guess stone fruit?
which the outer fleshy part surrounds a single shell or pit.
I actually asked Google to define drupaceous and said, did you mean rapacious?
Wow.
Did you mean propitious?
Did you?
No.
All right.
So what's the answer?
The answer is a coconut.
Even I've lost it.
I know. The answer is a coconut.
Coconut.
So
Okay,
apparently
why-
there's something in Hawaiian lore called kapu, and kapu is a code of conduct, and it dictates what people are allowed to do. Apparently, women were not allowed to eat certain things, including coconuts.
Coconuts.
So I
Any
don't know
reason
why.
for that?
They resembled testicles.
There's something called a kappa in Japanese folklore.
Oh, what is that?
It's this little creature that lives
In coconuts.
in the water, actually. And if you get too close to the water, it will pull you in and then pull out your anus ball, where your soul is kept.
Your anus ball.
Your anus ball. The Japanese believed that everyone had this hidden ball in their anus that was the seed of their soul, and the kappa was after that, so it would pull out your anus ball. Now, the kappa, they would be known to go on land as well. But in order to survive on land, they were water creatures. They had these little indentations in the top of their heads that they would fill with water. I'm not making this up.
I
I'm
know.
making this up. They would fill it with water. And as long as the water was there, they could survive. But if the water fell out, then they would be paralyzed. And so if you saw a kappa coming to you, the trick was you would bow to it, and they're unfailingly polite, so they would bow back to you.
Wow.
And the water would flow out, and they'd be paralyzed. They'd run
So
away.
they're polite pluckers of anus
ball. Yeah, exactly.
So is that why butt plugs are so popular in Japan? To protect their anus balls? But plugs. I think that's enough. I think we've gone as low as we
It looks a little bit like
could.
a turtle and a monkey. It's actually an interesting creature. Kappa. In your spare time, you can look it up.
Like, are the hands specially designed, modified for grasping anus balls?
Anus balls, I don't know. But they actually have woodcut prints of the extraction taking place if you want to find out. It's
Wow.
endlessly fascinating.
I think we've just got the image for this episode on the website.
There you go.
Okay, cool.
Are you going to ask me one? Or am I ask you one?
I think we're done.
We're done on that note. You're worried about your anus ball.
How can you top anus balls? Because now I'm thinking about the title for this episode. It's going to be Protect Your Anus Ball.
That's going to do wonders for our meetings. Such
All
as
right.
they are.
So until next time, dear listener, this has been Monkey Ray
And
with...
Monkey Graham.
We didn't introduce ourselves, but
No, we didn't.
now I know who we are.
Graham Sanders.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Oop oop, Graham.
Bum, bum. Oh, yeah.
You know, this is a re-recording of our intro.
That's right. That's much better than the other recording.
All
Wait,
right.
they're not going to know what the other recording was. They'll see. They won't see.
They will hear.
They will hear.
So, a kind listener...
Anyway, we also forgot to introduce ourselves properly last time.
Well, that's what I'm doing now.
Oh, okay.
You interrupted me.
Yeah, I
with
stomped all over your intro.
Jesus,
Please.
man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm here with the Jello Man, apparently. The Kool-Aid guy. Sorry.
Oh, that's right.
Jello Man, Kool-Aid
I thought
guy.
it was like some sort of house music hit from the 1980s. That bump bump. One of our listeners will know.
Should I put the other intro at the end?
Yeah,
as an outtake?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Or this could be the outtake. Anyway, what's your name? Cindy Lou.
I am here with Dr. Graham Sanders of the University of Toronto.
And I'm here with Ray Wattianandan of University of Ottawa.
That is correct.
All right.